Hello everybody, and welcome to the first bonus section. This is where I'm going to put the little bonus features, secrets and things like that I don't want to bog down the main gameplay with, as well as some cultural notes and just other cool stuff I learned during the course of the LP. So we'll start off right here with the only real side questy bonus thing that you can get. This is offered to you right after you save the town from the skeletons. Since you don't really have any special abilities yet, this is the only thing that you can do as of now. The chickens have gotten loose from this man's house. He needs your help getting them back in, and he assures you you can beat them up and he won't even care. Also, talking to the people in the town lets you know that they are they feel much better towards you than they did towards Juan. You get the sense that they sort of knew him, but, you know, he wasn't really, respected or all that, which is odd because as an agave farmer, he would be central to the production of tequila, which is a major industry, but whatever. I guess it just isn't a glamorous profession. So, the goal here is to get the chickens into the basket, and they will run away from you when they're red, which means you've, punched or hurt them in some way. So the thing to do is to just try to get them up to this main level, run towards the wall so they run away from you. I don't think they can jump over that little ledge there to get away. I've never seen them do it. It's not a hard side quest. Side quests in this game in general, they're just not a major part of gameplay. Finding secrets can be a good bit more trickier, but there's a few side quests that people give you, and they're not hard to get to. They're either like this, which is just kind of or kind of annoying. Some of them I don't like, but it's not so bad. So we get our first piece of heart, and that once you get 3 of them, you'll get a health upgrade. So that is that. So now, I think I would like to begin the cultural section, and my goodness do we have a lot to go through. I'm going to have to try to break this up into as small chunks as possible, because just the culture and the history and the setting there's a lot to go into, and it's pretty well done in the game, I have to say. So, let's jump right into it. I thought I would start as basically as I could by discussing Dia de los Muertos, which is the festival taking place during Guacamelee that is not insignificant due to the plot of the game. And I said in the intro that it's sort of a Latin American, Mexican Halloween, but that's way too far away to really do the holiday any justice. So I'm going to discuss it further now. Thanks to Eric Sean Boehner for pointing out that due to the fact that we are making actual tequila called tequila and that we are blue agave farmers, this is almost certainly the Jalisco region of Mexico. I very much appreciate that, because that helps me narrow down some of these traditions. So, Dia de los Muertos is a 2-day holiday. Well, Dia de los Muertos is a major holiday. Technically, Dia de los Muertos is the second of a 2-part holiday, and it takes place November 1st and 2nd. It takes place many places throughout the year. Mexico is probably one of the central places, but the the holiday has spread from there to much of Latin America, Spain, and even up here in the States we celebrate it a little bit, not as much as we would have if it was farther away from Halloween, probably. But I'm going to explain it a little bit in the beginning in contrast to Halloween, which for me was a more familiar holiday, and then I'm just going to go into the peculiarities of the holiday itself. It's a really cool holiday. The similarity between it and Halloween is they both have to do with the dead in some way. And Halloween these days is just all kinds of spooky, ghosts and junk like that. But to start with, it started as All Hallows Eve, which was supposed to be a day when there was a little bit more blurring of the lines between the living and the dead. And this was a European holiday, and one of the things that really sets Dia de los Muertos apart from something like Halloween is that in traditional European cultures, as well as in Christianity, which is obviously the dominant religious force in Europe, or was, I guess probably still is, the dead are pretty universally regarded as you don't want to run into them. They're bad. They should be someplace else. In traditional Norse mythology, and this was true in a lot of places actually, in Europe in general, China felt this way to a certain degree, Egypt, although those was a little bit different. Anywhere that it was thought that the dead needed something physical to have happiness in their afterlife, or any place that happiness in the afterlife was strongly tied to happiness in this present life. If the dead, if you saw them, if they were around in our world, it was generally because something had gone wrong with their burial and interment, and they were pissed. In Norse mythology, for instance, dead that were walking for this reason would be known as the Draugr, and if you've played Skyrim, you know how that generally goes. Hauntings tended to focus on some kind of resolution needing to take place. If it was someone who'd been murdered and their murderer was still loose, they'd go after that. And generally, if that didn't happen, if they didn't get that resolution, they would just make life miserable for whoever was around. You do see this in China as well. People that didn't take care of their ancestors, revere them properly, maintain their burial sites, would be subject to negative hauntings. And it's not like this was totally absent from Aztec culture. I'm particularly looking at Aztec culture. I might take a look at other cultures from indigenous Latin America, Mayans, and people like that, maybe later. But for now, the Aztecs is the central Mexican, and I mean geographically central Mexican people, are the ones that I'm really going to look at. Dia de los Muertos, the festivals of the dead took place on the Aztec calendar, so I'm going to be talking about them. It's not like they had no concept of negative hauntings. There was a particular class of ghost, if you want to call it that was women that died in childbirth. They got 5 unlucky days a year when they would come back to Earth from the realm that they were in and haunt crossroads, trying to find children of their own to steal or something like that. But that wasn't exactly the norm. Death wasn't seen as something which was, as far as we can tell, feared and detested and tried to be kept away, like it was in some other places. It was more embraced than it might be otherwise. And part of that is the Aztec belief in the cyclical nature of reality. Man is seen as having 1 foot in the land of the living, 1 foot in the land of the dead. Corn goes into the ground and sort of dies and then rises up again. The sun sets and rises. So there was this almost irreverence and kind of fun associated with the concept of death, probably not hurt by the fact that there was a month-long festival dedicated to the goddess of the dead. So these customs are what came into contact with the Catholic religion and the European traditions when the conquistadors came over and Europeans settled the area. And so you get this really interesting mix of traditional and Catholic beliefs. And what this turned into is Dia de los Muertos, which takes place November 1st and 2nd of the year, which corresponds to All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day on the Catholic calendar. All Saints' Day being a celebration of saints who have died, and All Souls' Day just sort of being a general everybody celebration. It is very clear that we are, in Catholic tradition, that they are honoring the life of those people, and they believe that they are existing in heaven now, for all saints, and then all souls they can be heaven, hell, or purgatory, I guess. But it isn't like they're being called to the earth. But that is a bit different in Dia de los Muertos. And it's different in traditional religions everywhere. The main difference, as I said before, is in the attitude. So this particular mixture of traditional beliefs and Catholic beliefs would lead to things like All Hallows' Eve, which was a mixture of European traditional and Catholic. And there they still kept the sort of fear and distrust of spirits. You light candles to keep them away, you wear costumes to keep them away. The idea is the spirits are scary, they're not supposed to be there, and you try to frighten them off or something like that. Whereas in Dia de los Muertos, a lot of what's done is supposed to be to attract the spirits. Now, I've found a lot of conflicting sources when it comes to Aztecs and their view of ancestors. One source I found says they think that people souls didn't exist after 4 years after their death. They would reach the end of their journey and be destroyed, which might have been different for human sacrifices and warriors, but anyway, it's not quite clear. What is clear is there wasn't this kind of long-term ancestor worship, like you would even see in the Day of All Saints or anything like that. They would have 2 days corresponding to the All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Well, the first would be Dia de los Inocentes, or Dia de los Angelitos, which is for children which died, usually just during the past year, but the last few years would also be acceptable, I guess. And the second day is simply Dia de los Muertos, which is for adults and everyone that died. And The central part of Dia de los Muertos is constructing this ofrenda, which is an altar, sort of, to the dead. It's supposed to honor dead loved ones. And from what I can tell, these tend to be... They can be somebody that really mattered in the life of the person, but it's common to have someone who's recently died on them. And so these will be set up in a home. Interestingly, from what I've read, if somebody from Mexico wants to correct me, please do. But from what I've read, like, banks will have them, businesses, major, corporate headquarters and stuff will have these ofrendas. The only difference being in government buildings, they'll take out any religious symbols that might be on them. And so, in keeping with the idea of this as a religious holiday in some ways, with Catholic flavorings, they might have crosses on them, candles, incense, things like that. Some of the other things that might be on there are marigolds are very popular, and you can see those in the game. Those are known as campashuichil. I think I'm saying that right. Campashuichil in Spanish, in the combination native Spanish speak. Those are considered to be flowers of the dead. It symbolizes death, so those are frequently on there. There will be kind of a sweet bread called pan de muertos, which translates to bread of the dead. Food and drinks, commonly the ones that the dead person being revered would, or being honored, I guess, would have liked. A photo of the dead person is common. And then there will be these really cool decorations that get set up around everywhere. My favorite one is called papel picado. I actually had some of this for a party I did a few years ago. I'm thinking about doing a Dia de los Muertos party this year. Anyway, papel picado is thin tissue paper which has been cut into this really beautiful ornamented scenes, and they commonly have skeletons on them. Esquelitos are extremely popular. Skulls are especially popular. That's another probably throwback to Aztec traditions where people would save skulls and sort of display them. It was kind of a good luck charm, but it also symbolized death and rebirth, like you'd expect from a festival of the dead. They will have these things called calaveras de azúcar, which are sugar skulls. You apparently get a mold and pour some kind of syrupy thing into it, and it makes this skull. Obviously, you don't have real skulls now, so that's what they do. They paint them in these really bright, elaborate colors. People dress up in costumes that obviously have a skeleton or a dead theme, but also just these very, very bright colors. They'll have parades. It's frequently there will be bottles of there'll be candies if it was a child for Dia de los Inocentes, or bottles of tequila, or drinks that the person liked if it was, an adult, something like that. One of the other symbols that they tend to have during this time probably relates to the idea of the goddess of the dead that they had before. The month-long festivities would have been devoted to her. And while there's not an exact modern analog, there does tend to be one female skeleton who shows up frequently in Dia de los Muertos imagery. She is known as La Calavera Catrina, which translates to elegant skull or dapper skeleton. I like. It started off actually in like 1910 with this famous Mexican printmaker Jose Guadalupe Posada. He made an image of a female skeleton, which definitely would have been recognized as, relating to native beliefs on the dead. So, people would represent themselves as skeletons, wearing this really fancy European outfit with this big fancy hat, and it was supposed to satirize native Mexicans who decided that they were too good for the native traditions and they wanted to go to this fancy European thing. But for whatever reason, it really caught on. So in particular, skulls are popular, but La Calavera Catrina, or just La Catrina, has become the symbol that's used everywhere. A quote by Jose Guadalupe Posada was, "La Catrina has become the referential image of death in Mexico. It's common to see her embodied as part of the celebrations of the Day of the Dead. She's become a motive for the creation of handcrafts made from clay or other materials. Representations may vary as well as the hat." So, if you see a behatted skeleton, that's definitely La Catrina. I mentioned before that there is a different attitude as regards this death holiday, and one of the really interesting traditions for me is there is a sense of levity and of satire about Day of the Dead that you don't see up here. So people who can write really well sometimes will come up with poems called calaveras, which is skulls again, which are supposed to be... It comes from a dream that somebody had. There was an 18th or 19th century newspaper published a poem narrating a dream of a cemetery in the future where everyone that you know is dead and buried there. And so you make up these little short poems that are supposed to be on their tombstones, which sort of satirize who they are. And there is just this sort of like sense of fun and mockery of the living that happens. Sometimes people will present Don Juan Tenorio, which was a famous play on this day. You probably know the legend of Don Juan. So yeah, there's just a sense of fun that's really absent. There is a bit of fun in Halloween, of course. I mean, you know, people dress up and go crazy or whatever. But the root of the holiday is, it's fun because it's scary. You know, it's fun in the same way people enjoy a horror movie or something, where the idea really is it's scary and that thrill, that adrenaline gets you going. But there's this sense of playfulness about Dia de los Muertos, about recognizing the temporariness of life and seeing things from this perspective. Oh well, you know, we'll be dead someday. We'll be having celebrations done about us. That's really kind of absent from the celebrations dealing with death that, you know, other cultures have. And there's just really, it's just this really like festive time. If you live anywhere in the American Southwest or in Latin America, I'm sure you know about it already. But besides that, it's just kind of a party that happens again, as I said, every November 1st and 2nd. So that's the background of what we've got in Guacamelee. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, given that we're dealing with the world of the living and the dead, that this 2-day festival, when the worlds would fade and there would be sort of this confluence of the two would sort of join together, makes a lot of sense for when the story was going to come. So yeah, I hope you liked the little introduction we had to Dia de los Muertos. Obviously, traditions vary depending on where you are. All throughout Latin America, there's different specific things they do. I know that in Guatemala, they will fly kites. They construct and fly giant kites. There are other kind of altars in other places. It's just this really cool, basically unknown holiday, at least where I am, which is sort of the northern United States. So yeah, that is the background for the holiday of this game. Hope you like learning about it. I hope you dig into it a little bit more and find out about it. If I do decide to have a Dia de los Muertos party, I think it would be cool if some of you guys could put on your own. So I'll, you know, maybe post a little bit about the preparations I'm making to put one on. And yeah, thanks for coming to this first of the cultural notes.